Hello and welcome to this instructional video on CATIA prismatic machining. In this video we're going to look at the facing operation. If you don't have this part that you see in front of you open in CATIA, please do so now. We've been working along in the past on several steps that are needed before one can define operations. These include, to recap, creating setups and manufacturing programs. In previous videos you were shown how to add setups to the model. There is always a default setup and a default manufacturing program. Adding additional setups allows you to flip the part and to machine it from different directions. Depending on the sequence in which you've done the videos, you may also have already looked at the curve follow operation. This is the case here in what you see in front of you. If you don't, that's not a problem. We can go ahead looking at the facing operation regardless of whether or not you've done this or not. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to go over to the machining operations toolbar. By default, this is docked on the right hand side of your frame. I'm going to undock it so that we can see a little bit more clearly where that operation is located on the toolbar. It's the third one over. So I'm going to select on this. Now if you don't have a operation already in the tree under your manufacturing program, you should just click on the manufacturing program to insert the facing operation. I'm going to go ahead and insert it after the curve follow. We may have to go back and change that later on. So I'm doing this deliberately so that later on we can see how to do this. So I'm going to add the facing operation after the curve follow. And what it does is it adds a new tool change, and inside that you have the beginnings of a facing operation. So because facing, of course, uses a different tool, CATIA in this case figures that out, and it's not going to use a sender drill, for example, to do facing. So it adds that tool change, knowing that a tool has to be added. So here we have the definition window in front of you, and again, the definition starts on the second tab, which is the geometry. And then as I described previously, when I described how operations are set up, you move to the right, looking at the tools, the process parameters, approaches, lead-ins, and then you double back to the strategy. So this picture here shows you what needs to be defined from a geometric perspective to define a facing operation. These areas are pickable, so as you move your mouse around, you can see that they highlight in orange. This here indicates where the tool first encounters material, and for facing this would be the stock. This would be the top of the stock. So let's look at the part a little bit to see how this is set up. If you rotate and zoom in, you will see that the transparent material is the stock, and there is a little bit of a gap, a 50 thousandths gap between the top of the stock and the top of the part. So in this case, the facing cutter, is going to hit material at the top of the stock. So this is what we would select using this pick. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to pick, and then I'm going to pick the top of the stock. Notice it turns green, meaning that it's picked. And you'll see on the display a marker saying top. So now that the top is defined, which is where the cutter first encounters material, we want to define the actual face that's going to be machined, the final face. And that's what this large rectangle here is meant to allow you to select. So let's go ahead and pick on this. The face that's going to be at the end is, of course, the face of the part, which is below the face of the stock. And in order to pick this, I have to hold down the alternate key and then left click. And this allows me to scan through the list until that face gets highlighted. So I want to make sure I highlight not the face of the stock, but the face below it, which is the face of the part. So again, I'm going to maybe rotate a little bit so that it's clear. And you can kind of read this here too. So this tells you the fact that right now the pick is going to pick the part and not the stock, which is the one above. So let's pick this. And notice that when I picked this, there were other regions that were red too. Here, for example, that turned green too. So when facing, you also have to tell the system, tell CATIA, where the boundary of the face is. So that's the extent to which the cutter has to move back and forth. And that's what this pickable region here is used to pick. Now, by default, CATIA assumes that the face that you pick for the bottom, which was the face of the part, that the boundaries of that face are also going to be the boundaries that you want to face too. So if we look at the boundaries of the part, I'm going to go and temporarily hide the stock so that's a little bit clearer. You can see that the boundaries include this edge of the chamfer that goes all the way around. It includes the interior boundary of this pocket and these interior circles which indicate holes. So if you think about it though, what we want to face, I'm going to bring back the stock now, we actually want to face to the boundary of the stock. So what happened here is that CATIA actually picked the wrong boundary for the facing operation, which is not a problem because we can fix that. So the way we fix that is by moving the mouse over this pickable region, right-clicking, and then we remove it so it turns back red. So in other words, we're telling CATIA, no, what you decided upon for the boundary is incorrect, and we're going to actually pick that independently of the bottom surface. So let's go ahead and now pick on this last remaining red area. The Edge Selection toolbar appears as you may have seen previously. And what we're going to do is we're going to go around and pick the edges of the stock. So starting on this edge here, I'm going to go around and pick these edges, and these edges are in fact going to define what the boundary is of the facing operation. So let's go ahead, pick the top edge, and pick these in the order so that they form a loop. So this arrow helps you too to define the direction. So just go around the loop, and in this case we just have 4 edges to pick. The Edge Selection toolbar has some tools that assist you in picking edges, and that becomes more critical when you have a boundary that has a lot of edges on it, which can happen. But in this case we only have 4, so just picking each one independently is fine. And as before, you can either hit the OK button here or double click in the background. Let's hit the OK button, and we have now defined the boundary of the facing operation. So in other words, we're going to face from the top surface down to the bottom surface, and then we're going to face all this material that lies within those 4 curves that we just picked. Now there are a couple of other things you can pick too. A fixture, if it's relevant. In this case, this surface here is way above the fixture, so it would not necessarily be needed. We can also define a point where the facing operation is to start, so it helps you influence where the cutter comes down. We're going to, again, ignore this for the time being. We can come back and choose this if we find that the result we get is not what we want. Okay, so that's the first tab, or the second one really in the sequence from left to right. Let's move over now to the third tab, which is where we select the tool. And notice that CATIA actually selected a tool automatically from the resource list. If you recall previously, we loaded these tools in from a catalog, and in this list there is a cutter down here which is called Face Mill 2 inches diameter carbide, and CATIA looked through the list and saw that there was a face mill there and automatically picked it. The thing that we do have to change here though is the tool number. So this number here corresponds to the number that will be selected on the actual machine tool, and we don't have machines that have 40 tool places in our carousel. Typically we use T10 as the spot for our face mill, so I'm going to change this here from 40 to 10. So when the code is generated, the code that tells the machine to do a tool change will indicate that T10 is the tool to be used. Now, as you may have seen before, if you've already done the curve following operation, there's a picture here of the cutting tool that shows you the geometry of the tool. So when we say 2-inch cutter, in our case we're referring to this distance here from the tip of the insert on one side to the tip on the other. And then there's a 45-degree angle for our inserts. The body of the cutter is actually larger, which is 3 inches. If you click on the More button, you will see additional information. This information here in these text fields corresponds to the information here on these dimensions. If we move over to the Technology tab, we see the number of flutes in the cutter. So our face mills have 4 inserts at 90 degrees. with respect to each other. It's a right-hand cutter. This can be used either for facing or roughing or finishing. It's an insert holder with coated carbide inserts. And then the third tab over are feeds and speeds. So these are the recommended feeds and speeds that we've programmed or stored with this tool. This is a starting point. There may be reasons to modify these, but these are where you start in terms of your speeds and feeds. So this is your tool. Again, you're just selecting the tool, and in this case, CATIA selected the right tool. If the wrong tool was selected, you'd have to come over here, click on this, and this shows you the list of potential tools that can be used for facing. Notice it's filtered, and the only tools here, in addition to the facing cutter, which is already selected, are your end mills. So CATIA is smart enough to know that you can't face with a drill or a center drill. And let's go over here now to our fourth tab, which is our speeds and feeds for the operation. The machining speed, this here is your roughing feed rate. This is actually copied in from the tool. You can see that it's grayed out, and as is the finishing feed rate. Also to the machining, the spindle speed is also copied in, and again, these are grayed out. You can, if you want to, override these values which come in from the tool by unchecking this box. Notice that the fields now become editable, and you can change these. I'm going to leave them checked. The other information that you have to input are your approaches and your retract speeds. These are not set in the tool. These are set only in the operation, so you have to have these set. So for approach, in this case, we're going to bring the cutter down vertically a short distance. We can slow down the tool to 15 inches per minute, and then the retract as the tool pulls away can be a lot faster. So I'm going to stop there. These are the first 3 tabs. In the next video, we'll look at the remaining 2 tabs and set up the values, the parameters there, and then go ahead and simulate our facing operation.